Happy New Year. Are you totally depressed? I kind of am. No, I'm not depressed. I think there's a kind of postpartum, although yeah, maybe a postpartum depression type of phenomenon after Christmas. There's a birth, and then uh, anyway, I've been thinking a lot about. Um, I think this is probably true for many of us. Like, I don't really, how few people I really have to talk to about the stuff that consumes me, the questions of my heart, the desires, the only real sorrow is the failure to become a saint. Um, just so aware of I don't want to say impending death, but that death comes for all of us and we're just not going to be finished. Um, Flannery O'Connor, however, said we are all rather blessed in our deprivations if we allow ourselves to be. So I think, and I realize maybe this is a gift of age. Even if I did have people to talk to, whatever that means, it still wouldn't be enough. Like this, there would still be this huge lack, or this longing, unfulfilled longing. Uh, I wanted to mention the Litany of Humility, which Father keeps giving me as my penance and confession. It's kind of telling. Um, you all probably know it. I have a little pamphlet. Look, it has like the crown of thorns, Litany of Humility. It sounds really hard. It sounds it's kind of hardcore. Oh, Jesus, meek and humble of heart, hear me. From the desire of being esteemed, deliver me, Jesus. From the desire of being loved, deliver me, Jesus. On it goes, extolled, honored, praised, preferred to others, consulted. Deliver me, Jesus, from the fear of being despised, fear of suffering rebukes, being forgotten, being calumniated, being ridiculed, deliver me, and then that others may be loved more than I. Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it, etc. You can read it online. But I love the last one, that others may become holier than I, provided that I may become as holy as I should. Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. Anyway, it is really. I've read it at various times every morning, and now I'm doing so again, or praying it rather, because it makes me realize how much of my stuff just stems from. Yeah, and even when you kind of get your ego out of the way, it's not so much you even want to be the favorite, you just want to be like included in anything. Um, but even that, yeah, I guess we get to just accept however and how much we're included, and be grateful. And meanwhile, I mean, how often do we read about the hideous loneliness of our culture, the world, old people dying in their apartments alone in Japan and being like mummified because no one even checks on them for weeks or whatever. So I'm in solidarity, of course. It's not even loneliness, it's some other, it's like uh, yeah, it's like a kind of spareness. Kind of austerity that I perhaps would not have chosen on my own. But on the other hand, like all austerities, turns out to suit me down to the ground in a way, because it does leave me the solitude and silence that as soon as I'm with people, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get alone and be by myself. Um, so part of that's just the human condition of kind of always wanting things to be different, maybe. Um, But on the issue, or the subject of silence, I just wanted to recommend a film. I just rewatched it. Wonderful, wonderful documentary that came out, Into Great Silence, about the Carthusian monks of the Grand Chartreuse in the French Alps. just an incredible documentary. When was it made? 2007. So it was a while ago. And now you can't. I had to buy this from eBay, the actual DVD, because I couldn't find it anywhere. I don't. It doesn't seem to be streaming anywhere. Maybe I didn't look hard enough, but seems to have kind of fallen off the radar, which is a shame. I'm going to write a column about it. But you can find it. I mean, you just have to buy it, it seemed to me. I saw it at first in the movie theater, which is definitely the ideal way to see it. It really, really cries out to be seen on a large screen. But I just settle for my laptop because I don't even. Okay, I have this space heater that's like burning, be burning me. Um, uh, yeah, so I watched it on my laptop, but even on my laptop, I mean, okay, I'll just read this little blurb. Nestled deep in the postcard perfect French Alps, the Grand Chartreuse is considered one of the world's most ascetic monasteries. Talk about asceticism. My place would look like Versailles compared to. In 1984, German filmmaker Philip Groening, I guess, Gro, umlaut, two little dots over the O, Ning, wrote to the Carthusian order for permission to make a documentary about them. They said they would get back to him. 16 years later, they thought about it. 16 years later, they got back to him. I don't know if he had forgotten all about it or what, but they got back to him and said, okay, we're ready if you still want to come. Groning sans crew or artificial lighting lived in the monks' quarters for 6 months, filming their daily prayers, tasks, rituals, and rare outdoor excursions. This transcendent, closely observed film seeks to embody a monastery rather than simply depict one. It has no score, no voiceover, no archival footage. So this documentary, it's so radical. It's completely silent except for the scrape of a shoe on stone or the opening of a book or the creak of the prie-dieu as the monk kneels in his cell to pray. And these guys, it's this beautiful, I don't know, I guess it would be Romanesque architecture. I don't even know, but with the arches and the long colonnades with the arches and the um, everything's kind of marble and stone and beautiful old wood and surrounded, of course, by these snow-covered mountains. Um, but the monks, you don't learn anything about them. They don't even mention that they make this world famous liqueur. Like there's no mention of that anywhere in the documentary. So it's a kind of meditative invitation just to be with them. It really is kind of a monastic experience, a very meditative experience, and you just they pray. I don't really get this because at one point I read they only come out of their cells 3 times a day, twice for prayer, once for mass. But then when you read on the kind of what do they call that? Like the extra material, there's a separate disc. And it talks about the schedule of the monastery, and they never sleep for more than 3 hours. So they get up at midnight, or they're in the chapel at midnight, and that is their longest prayer of the day, vigils. 2 to 3 hours they're in there, and then they come back, and I think maybe they can sleep for a little bit if they want to, but then they're back again, and then they go back for 8 a.m. mass. I'm not sure if, I mean, they definitely say all the hours of the day, um, the liturgy of the hours. So they say, 9 o'clock, noon, 3 o'clock, the whole thing, Vespers, of course, Compline. But I'm not sure if they say most of them in their cells. Mass is at 8 a.m. But anyway, it's hardcore because can you imagine not ever sleeping for more than 3 hours? And so you just just will show them like chopping celery, or shoveling the snow off the raised bed where they're going to plant the seeds for the carrots. Lots of shots of them are alone in their cells, prayer in the beautiful, beautiful chapel mass. But it's not. But they don't. It's really brilliant that they don't tell you hardly anything about them. You never learn the monks' names. And then every once in a while, he'll have this kind of portrait shot where the camera, it'll just be the face of a monk, like close up for like 10, 15 seconds, just looking straight at the camera. And it just makes you want to weep, there's no story, there's no drama, there's no narrative arc, but it's the whole documentary is gives you the sense of eternity, of the power of prayer, of these, the mystery of a life of a man that would, or a woman, of course there's cloistered nuns as well, that would give themselves over so thoroughly to God. It's just is really, really beautiful, very moving. You can listen, also you can hear, there's stuff on YouTube, you can hear like the 2 hour night prayer has been recorded, so you can kind of listen to it maybe as you fall asleep. I'm going to write a column about it because I have a lot of other thoughts, but I just want to recommend it in case you can get a hold of it. Uh, yeah, just two special features: 1 hour of additional scenes, night office, a 53-minute video excerpt of the monk's nightly ritual of psalms, lauds, and matins. Uh, so, and I guess my point is, or part of it, that in this cacophony that we live in, um, I don't know who said, oh, it's like 10 monks in a cave who are keeping the world alive by their prayer, keeping the world spinning on its axis. But boy, you really feel that when you see this. I mean, I was falling asleep last night, and I just thought those guys, of course, it's probably 8, 9 hours ahead there, so it's not exactly at the same time, but they're in there in the French Alps praying. It was a deep sense of solidarity. Um, So into great silence. And then the other thing I wanted to say. So then this morning, I belong to this really weird gym. Like when you get Medicare, they have this thing called, it's got some lame name like Silver and Fit, or Silver Slippers, or some weird name like that. But anyway, it's for like old people, and they let you join the gym for free basically. So my main consideration is always, how close is it? Because I don't want to drive very far. Not that, I mean, I don't even really, I'm not like afraid of driving, but everything is like, yeah, it's, why spend the time driving if you don't have to? So I belong to this place called the Mid Valley Athletic Club. It's right up the street. It's actually almost adjacent to St. Ambrose, which is great. They have 9 a.m. mass there. But it's like it's adjacent to what seems to be Section 8 housing. Like there's a laundry room right next door to the thing where these residents are always. Um, so it's great. It's not hoity-toity at all, and it's totally free. And I just do the weight. I just like the weight resistance things, machines, and so I just do. Will do the exact same thing every time I go. Um, it's great. I mean, many times I'm in there all by myself. And in fact, it's not exactly creepy, but sometimes like, there'll be like one guy who will come in or something. And I'm like, oh, this would make a great horror film, like, like butchered at the gym. Um, let's not even joke about that. Because it's probably happened somewhere. But anyway, um, no, I love it. And so I've now, anyway, the point is, I wanted to listen to some stuff while I was there. And, lately I'm like, oh, I'm dying to listen to just some really solid kind of homily type I don't know if you want to say theology, as I never tire of saying, I'm not a theologian, but just like really solid, interesting. So for some reason, and I don't, this is partly because I don't have my ear sufficiently to the ground, but the kind of contemporary people that I have heard, or yeah, just seem kind of either bland or sort of jokey, like trying to be like hip or something. It's like, oh please. Catholicism is not hip, or at least, I mean, in one sense, it's always the most radical thing on earth. But this effort to be sort of relevant kind of falls flat. Anyway, so all of a sudden I thought of like Bishop Fulton Sheen, who I just kind of heard his voice a couple times, and he kind of reminded me of I think there was a show called Dark Shadows back in the 70s or something. I mean, he's kind of odd, which for me is usually or can be like a huge calling card. But anyway, I thought, no, but he's really famous for his sermons. So I started listening. There's huge playlists on YouTube. And so I listened to one of them today, and it was absolutely great. He's got a whole slew of them, as you all probably know. I'm always the last to know anything. Um, but it's called the Humanity of Christ. And he talks about how Christ contains within him every human being that was ever born, is alive now, will ever be born, um, gathers it all to himself. Um, but he just, he's like kind of an oddball, which I think is great because in this culture, everything has to be so homogenized that like somehow that's the message we get. Like just tamp down anything about you that's like weird or not exactly cookie cutter to the next influencer or something. So he's weird. He's kind of weird, and but he talks about at one point, speaking of how Christ contains every human being, and he says he's talking about the fall, and he says, humanity is actually characterized by a terrible monotony. Do you think you are the only tortured soul in existence? No, Christ contains with him all our neuroses, our psychoses. Like, oh, I love this guy. Um, but he's not because he's odd, but because he actually has some interesting things to say. I'm sure many interesting things to say. But he makes the point, he said people are drawn, of course he's talking back in the 60s or something, 50, 60 years ago. Though people are drawn to Eastern religions today because we need a religion, but the fact is Christianity costs. There's a cost to it. You got to be, there's a cost, and some other religions don't have much of a cost and are therefore more attractive. And I mean, just that basic. How often? I mean, when's the last time you heard a homily when the guy like really said like, hey people, there's a freaking cost, and it's a heavy cost. It's really the cost of everything. In this documentary they have these a few scripture readings that they keep repeating throughout, and one of them is Christ saying, unless you renounce everything and fall, and you cannot be my disciple, unless you leave the world behind. And then another one is from the Song of Songs. So I think it's a Song of Songs. He seduced me and I let myself be seduced. Or maybe that's St. John of the Cross. But because we need something to strive for, right? We need people to call us higher and to emphasize over and over again what the standard is to what we're being called and what the cost is and the price, the cost that this is where the martyrs and saints come in. And I think it's why I'm so compelled by people of all stripes, not necessarily Catholics, obviously, but that the heroes of the Holocaust, the hideous purges under Stalin, um, under extreme conditions, who held fast. I can barely hold fast in my own insanely abundant, as we all live, really. I mean, if you're watching this, you probably live in, compared to most of the world, even if you're sort of lower middle class still compared to most of the rest of the world. So anyway, Bishop Fulton Sheen, he's going to be another avenue of exploration and inquiry. Feel free, if you have any other people that you like to listen to. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of just as far as, like, I guess you'd say, like, homiletics or um, lectures or talks that you find compelling. Anyway, again, I've nattered on way too long, but there you go. I've no one to talk to, so I talk to myself. All right. Again, Happy New Year, January 3rd, Epiphany coming up.